Welcome to Real Estate Real World, where we talk to the movers, shakers, and leaders that are getting it done right now in the real estate industry and beyond. Your host, margueritecrespillo, started this podcast simply dedicated to call people about what's really happening in this crazy roller coaster ride of real estate. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and stay up to date on the newest stuff by adding yourself to the list at www.realestaterealworld.com. Now your host, margueritecrespillo.
Hello, everybody. It's margueritecrespillo, and welcome to another fabulous edition of Real Estate Real World, where we get to talk to all the cool people that are getting things done in and around the real estate world. So today I'll have a very special guest. She's probably one of the most important people in the world in my book. She's a gal who runs the team, right? Runs all the support stuff that keeps us crazy, wild, wacky salespeople in line and getting stuff done and bringing in the business. Today, we have Christy Grossman. She is the Chief Operating Officer of the Belt team with Keller Williams Realty out there in McLean, Virginia, just outside of Washington, D.C., where she leads the country's longest running mastermind for executive assistants. We all need great assistants. The Belt team is one of Keller Williams Realty's top 150 teams and closed $68 million in 2015. That's not peanuts. A self-proclaimed geek at heart. We just had my own geek in here helping us out. Christy was interviewed on stage by Gary Keller at Keller Williams Mega Camp, featured at KW Mega Tech. She's also a contributor for Inman News, has been a panelist at Inman Connect. I just got back from Inman. And Inman on the Road. Her vast experience as COO, Chief Operations Officer, right, has fueled her passion for developing those riding shotgun in leadership positions in real estate. She consults with mega agents and executive assistants around the country. Favorite class to teach is her newest interactive workshop called Be a Boss. That's it. 10 secrets of a mega executive assistant. When this wizard is not behind her screen, you'll probably find her running the Game Changer app as scorekeeper on the baseball field for future MLB draft picks. That's awesome. And we have a bunch of links to you, your information, your website, all that we'll be posting in the show notes for our listeners at the end of the show here. So welcome.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. Truly honored to be here.
I'm excited to have you. So tell me a little bit about your background. It's my understanding, like, real estate runs in your blood. It's been in your family a while, right?
So yeah, I'm the typical person who grew up in the real estate world and swore she would never get into real estate after But yeah, my mom was a superstar realtor on her own as a single agent for a long time. And I was in the mortgage business for about 10 years and loved what I did, but was a workaholic. And one night, my husband brought my girls in. I have 2 daughters, to have ice cream with me at 9:00 at night so they could actually see me that day before they went to bed. And I woke up the next day and I thought, this just isn't why I was meant to be here. And I really want to spend time with my kids. So I actually went and searched out my mom, and my brother had just joined her earlier that year from commercial real estate, and said, hey, you had a bad experience with an assistant. They had an assistant who used my mom's credit card to buy tires for her car.
Nice.
How about if I join you for a year and we'll see how it goes? And if it doesn't work out, you can bail at the end of the year. And that was 20 years ago. So I guess it worked out.
I guess it worked out. Wow. So my big question, I think, and I'm sure that a lot of our listeners struggle with this, is the big fear is always number one, how do you even find an assistant? And then how do you, and this will be longer than I anticipated, but how do you keep that assistant from using your credit card and buying new tires? Like, I tragically went through that twice. I had an assistant who was doing my billing, and now I know that no one cares about your money as much as you do. So it's important that you look at it and you track it. But she was writing checks to one person in the QuickBooks program, but the actual physical check was being written to her to the tune of $20,000. It was pretty devastating. Yeah.
Yeah. I think how you to answer your second question is to answer the first question, which is to make sure that you're hiring right. I think that hiring is probably not the funnest process that we all like to go through. It's not an easy process. And so I think we skip over a lot of important steps in the process. And I like to think of it on my team, we have people that have been with us for a fairly long time, which is pretty unusual, especially in the assistant world. I facilitate and teach around the country. So I have a lot of groups coming in and there's huge turnover in assistants.
Totally.
And I think because we're not hiring, we're not taking the time up front. The typical personality of an entrepreneur wants to do things fast.
Exactly.
Right? Get through, get it done. But I think of it like when you're getting married, you can fall in love. And I actually was just talking to somebody yesterday who told me that she fell in love on graduation night of high school. And 2 months later, she was married. And 2 years later, she was divorced. And it doesn't surprise you, right? Because fall in love, you move quickly. And I think that's what we do when we hire real estate assistants. We just fall in love with the person and we hire quickly instead of having a process in place. And if you have a process in place and you can follow the process, you're much more likely to develop a long-term relationship where you really understand each other. You know what each other's goals are, why you do, what your personality profile is, all those things rolled into one that are going to mean that your relationship lasts for a longer time.
So where my brain goes as soon as you say all that is I actually suck at that part. So as an entrepreneur and as a salesperson, that's why I need someone like you to come in and put that in place. So it's like a catch-22, it feels.
Yeah, it's chicken and egg. But I think if you can force yourself to get through this first hire, then that person can help you with the rest of building up your team. They can help you with the systems and processes for that. But I think it's really important. If you're a single agent or a small team, you've built your business on your name and your reputation, right? And so sometimes it's a little scary to bring new people into that. But I think if you can really make a list of what exactly do I want this person to do? So what's the job description? Because we all want assistants to do different things.
I'm writing this down. Let me get my pen.
Is it systems? Is it contract load? Go ahead. You got your pen?
I got my pen. I'm ready.
Write down a job description so you know exactly what to do. Because the talents, say, for example, you need a marketing person or say you need a contract and close person, those two people might have different skill requirements, different behavioral profiles. So that's why you want to write down your job description first. Now, you may want somebody that does all of them, but you need to decide what's the most important piece of that puzzle, because that's what you're going to hire to. And then I would say you want to write down a behavioral profile. My team likes to use the DISC profile. I'm sure you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
So you're going to define the job profile based on DISC. So if I need somebody who's going to be really interactive with my clients, I might need someone who is an S, who's really patient, for example. Or say I'm hiring an accountant who's going to do we were just talking about paying our bills and all that stuff. I'm probably going to hire a high C. If I want to hire somebody, if I'm building a big team, maybe I want to build to 20 people on my team. And like my team, for example, has 10 people. My DISC profile as an assistant may be a little bit different. So I'm a DC. I'm a little bit more of a driver, a get things done kind of person. So you want to have a job description, and then you want to have a job profile, a behavioral profile. And then the last piece I think you really need is culture. So what's the culture of your team, whether you're an individual agent or you're growing into a bigger team? What does that mean? What are the things that are important to you? Is it integrity? Is it having fun? Is it customer service? Just define those things. And then that's when you start looking for an assistant. I think what we often do is we start looking for an assistant before we really know what all those things mean to us.
Yeah, because it just gets a bit overwhelming, right? Like I frequently talk about as agents, we use the seagull approach, right? We hire the first person that's breathing that walks past our office, and then we throw them in a desk, we fly over, we dump a bunch of crap on their desk, and we fly out.
Exactly. And then we don't know why it's not all done.
And we don't understand why it's not done. One of the best learning lessons that ever happened to me. So I had an assistant for 14 years, and then she moved to Tennessee because dang man, they fall in love. And So she moved to Tennessee, and I remember her one day. I was like, I don't understand what the problem is. It only takes 5 minutes. It takes 5 minutes. And she walks out of the office. She comes back a few minutes later. She walks in. She sets the file on my desk. She goes and sets a timer next to it. She goes, "Okay, we're gonna time you. Ready?" And I'm like, "What?" And she goes, "We're gonna time you." And so I go, "It only takes 5 minutes. This won't take long." And of course, it took me like 35 minutes to get it done. And she goes, "See, everything doesn't take 5 minutes." And I was like, the best. Yeah, so it was a great learning lesson for me because in my mind, my entrepreneurial salesperson mind, everything takes 5 minutes. I don't know what the problem is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's only.
Exactly. So if you find your specific person, okay, so first of all, what is your disc profile? You said it was.
I'm a DC. I'm like 99% D and then 64% C.
I didn't even know that existed. I thought, are you a freak of nature?
It's interesting. I'm probably a freak of nature in terms of an assisted role, but I'm really more of in a leadership role on my team since I'm the chief operating officer and we have 10 people. I started as an assistant to just 2 agents with just the 3 of us before teams even existed. My job has evolved over time into something very different than it was in the beginning.
So what would you say, like somebody who's a transaction manager on your team or somebody who's helping get those systems in place, what would that profile look like?
So it still depends. I'll give you 2 scenarios. So on my team, my transaction manager is a CS. She's extremely detail oriented. Our systems are very detail oriented. So she's a perfect fit for that. Now, some teams probably have an SC where the person has a lot more interaction with clients and is maybe in person with clients, and they need that really calm, patient personality. So I think both of those personalities work well for transaction coordinator.
Okay.
I could do transaction coordination, but my high D means that I'm bored with it and ready to move on very quickly.
Okay, which is why you make a great COO.
Exactly.
Like you can do the work, it's just not your best. That's not the best place for you to be.
Hiring. As long as someone's intelligent and they share your values, they can probably do any role. When I was in the mortgage business, I was a loan officer for a year, which is the same thing as being a realtor. It's a sales job. It's a commission job. And I made more money than many other years in my life. I just hated it.
Right.
And I was great at it. People loved me and I did a lot of business, but I just didn't enjoy it. So I think we can all do a lot of jobs if we're intelligent, but you want to find somebody who loves doing the things you don't do.
Exactly.
And then they'll last longer.
So let's go back a little bit again to someone in the beginning. You said that in the beginning it was just you and you had 2 agents that you worked for. And
Right.
so what did that scenario look like? And then how did you go to that next step? How did you guys go to that next step and get that next person?
First of all, let me make the point. The 2 agents and me, the first step was them hiring me. I think a lot of agents make the mistake of thinking, oh, I have all this business, I have leads, so my first hire is going to be an agent. And I would say that it's much more valuable to the agent to hire the admin first and then start adding agents to the team.
Good point.
Because there's no reason to really split your commission 50-50 or however you're going to split your commission for all these leads coming in when you can just hire somebody to do the lower hourly jobs.
That's a very good point.
Leverage your time so that you can put more homes under contract, do more listings or do more buyers, whichever you're doing. So we did that. And then we got to the point where the agents wanted to have more quality of life. So we added another agent to the team so that they could share weekends and things like that, just for quality of life and having more personal time. And then we went through a change in our team where my brother bought my mom out about 10 or 12 years ago. And that's when we conscientiously said, we want to put a team together. We want to follow what are the successful models out there and how are we going to do this? And then that's how we've grown by adding agents. And then as we've added agents, we also added additional operations support.
So do you have any kind of metrics for when an agent should get an assistant? I know for me, I was 6 months in the business and I got it. I got an assistant. I just didn't. I knew I couldn't do it all. But what I see typically is it seems like once an agent hits about 18 units or so, if they don't get help, they bounce back. And otherwise, they can't seem to blow through that number. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, when you hit a ceiling, when you start having sticky notes all over the place and your clients are calling and your clients aren't happy because things are falling through the cracks, that's probably a sign that you may need an assistant. I would say to be very purposeful about it. Lay out your finances, look at your P&L, put aside 6 months of salary. Once you really don't even need 6 months of salary, but I'm conservative, so I would say 6 months, 3 to 6 months of whatever you're going to pay your assistant. Put that aside so that you have it. And then when you hire somebody, hire them with the expectation, and this is something that I teach in my Mega EA class. There's a difference between hiring an average assistant and hiring someone that you think will be what I call a mega assistant. So a mega assistant, in my book, should generate 3 times their income in GCI to the team. So most people hire an assistant thinking, oh, as long as they save me some time or make me a little bit of money, it'll be great. And I say, why not go after the talented person and hire someone who, through the implementation of systems, is going to generate business for you. So not only are they paying for themselves, they're plusing your business on top of that. So that's what I would say in terms of when you hire somebody. That's being purposeful about hiring somebody versus just hiring somebody randomly.
But that doesn't just mean, I think maybe where someone would think is, oh, that means they have to go out and get leads for me. I don't know. That's not what you're saying.
No. So what I'm saying is we're wired for systems. We're wired for detail and logic. And there's a lot of what you do that is very entrepreneurial, but you're not systematic about it. You don't remember to do it every day. So I'll give you an example. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we started thinking online reviews are really important and we need to get on that train. So every once in a while, the agents would say, oh, can you write us a review? You know how that happens. And then you forget and then you go on to the next thing. So I said, let's just put a system in place. And I put a whole system with emails and phone calls, and the agents didn't have to do anything. I reminded them or I did it for them. And we now generate about $350,000 a year in GCI in income directly from our Zillow reviews.
Wow.
So that was something really small that didn't take me long at all to put in place that generated income. And that's my job, systems.
So that system, depending on somebody's income, like that, you clearly paid for yourself times.
I think myself times.
Right. Multiple times. Okay. So now I get it. So in the perfect world, the perfect person that you hire is going to help you get those systems in place that create the consistency of your business, which is what most of us are missing.
Exactly.
Got it.
Yeah. And it can be all kinds of things. It can be client events. It can be a million things. Putting your database together that you've never had a chance to do, or remembering to actually call them.
Oh, yeah. That's where the money is, the follow-up. We all know what's in the follow-up.
Yeah.
So what was the next person that you guys hired? You said you got a couple agents now, you're helping your agents, and your team is starting to grow. Like, at what point do you think that you're too busy and now you need to bring that next person in?
I'm trying to think. So it's going to be different in different markets because, so for example, in my market, I'm in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. It's a market full of entrepreneurs and high Ds, CEOs. It's a high dollar, it's not a luxury market, but it's a higher average sales price than many places around the country. So our units that we do is smaller than you may have teams listening who are in the Midwest that are doing 500 units a year or something like that. So it's going to depend on that. For us, I count 50 units per employee, per operations employee as my target of when I need to hire. I actually can go higher than that. And my rule of thumb is that we need to be trending for 3 months at a higher production volume before I hire that next person. So figure out how much your initial person can do. And then when you see your business growing, wait until 3 months have gone by, that you've proven that you're at the new level of business for 3 months. And that's when you should bring the next person in. Does that make sense?
It completely does. And I think that so many of us are hesitant to hire that first person at all but then we're bombarding our second person to where that, don't you think that's a big part of why there's high turnover?
I'm not following you.
It seems like a lot of, we'll go back to the beginning where I talked about the seagull approach. Agents are just dumping. And this person can only handle so much. And so an agent might be hesitant to hire that next person to get that person help. And so that's where I think people are struggling with.
What I would suggest is to make it easier on the agent, and it actually makes sense for the operations person as well. The next person, if the next person is an operations person, should be hired by the admin, not by the agent.
Oh, that's a key component.
Yeah. And then I would suggest that as you add other people to the team, that whoever is going to be holding them accountable and leading them ultimately should be doing the hiring. But I, for example, assist in the hiring of our agents. So Terry is the one doing the primary recruiting and the interviewing and the verification of the disc and all that kind of stuff. But I assist him in doing some of the initial screening. So you can work that as a partnership.
So let's talk a little bit about, we won't talk about specifics of what people get paid, but I want to help our listeners understand this, because what I have learned is that there are two types of people on the planet. There are people who get paid for results, typically salespeople, and people who get paid for time, which is typically your administrative staff people. And I hear agents all the time say, I'm going to hire somebody and I'm going to give them a percentage of my sales that close, my commissions. Let's just say it's 10% or 20% or whatever that number is. The problem is that the person who likes to get paid for time can't handle the inconsistency, right? So that agent closes 2 deals last month and then doesn't close anything for a couple months. And so that admin person isn't getting paid. And I've just never seen it work where an administrative gets paid strictly on a percentage of the agent's sales. What are your thoughts on that?
Number one, paying on a percentage might sound really great to you when you're not doing very much business, but as your business grows and scales, that's going to be unscalable.
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted you to say.
Yeah. Okay. You're going to put yourself out of business and you're not going to have enough leverage. You're not going to have enough money to pay for the leverage you need to do the business that you're going to do if you hired the right people to work with you.
And don't you think many times over that you're going to have a tough time getting the right people to work for you, because if they are somebody who's willing to be paid on results, commission, they're going to go be you.
Reframe that a little bit. So I totally agree with you that there are two types of people. Those are paid on for time and those are paid for results. All the people on my team are paid for results, whether they are salespeople or admins. Now, that doesn't mean that they're all on commission.
Okay, so explain that.
Yeah. My operations person is on salary. She has whatever vacation she wants. She can take 3 months vacation or 1 week vacation or whenever she wants, as long as the job is done and we get the results. So she is on a fixed salary, but we have expectations for what that means she does, which she exceeds by 1,000,000-fold. She's wonderful. We also, on the admin side, do bonuses based on profitability. So they're not specific like per transaction bonuses, but it makes the team work better as a whole if you do some kind of profit sharing or bonuses based on profitability. Because it's not how many deals we do, it's how much money we keep at the end of the day that matters to the business. So we all want to be incented for the business to be profitable.
So help me understand how you, when you say they get paid for results or how you hold them accountable, like how do you have a matrix that you follow? How do you create that says, okay, I know you got the job done. And so am I making sense? I'm not sure I'm making sense here.
Are you talking about accountability?
Yes.
Okay. So we try to meet on an every other week basis. Some of us meet weekly, some of us meet every other week. And we have annual goals. We chunk them down to monthly goals, and then we chunk them down to the top 3 things of the week that you're going to accomplish. And that's up to the people on the team of what their goals are, whether you're in sales or on the operations side. So my transaction manager may have goals on hers that say 95% of our contracts are going to close on time this year. 90% of our listings are going to be ready 24 hours ahead of time to go in the MLS. I'm going to create an operations manual, etc. The salespeople are probably going to have dollar goals. I'm going to sell 24 million. It's going to be this many units with this much commission. And then we just talk for 15 minutes every week. How's it going? Did you have any problems last week? Anything I can help you with? And then it's not like you do an annual review. You don't need to because you're talking every week or every other week. And the last thing goes in accountability is just hiring accountable people who want to be accountable, who want to be held accountable. I crave accountability because I know with accountability that I get to my goals faster. So that's the kind of people that I want to hire.
So I love that because, but how do you necessarily know that? Do you think that's part of a disc profile? Like, how would I know in the interview process that somebody really wants to be held accountable? Or do you think really everyone does?
Oh, no, everybody doesn't. Most people don't, I think. I think you have to ask really great questions when you're doing the interview. And I think you have to ask great questions when you're doing your reference checks. So those are things that come out in the process. Say, for example, I like to hire people who were athletes because athletes are successful because they have great coaches. So I know they're coachable. I know they're competitive if they were successful in athletics.
Wow.
It often will come up in their history. You ask them, do you have mentors? Do you have coaches? People who want to be held accountable have those people in their lives, whether they are official paid coaches. Probably not when you're hiring an admin. Most admins won't say that, but they may say, yeah, I have a mentor. My mentor in my financial world is this, or yeah, I had a mentor at my old job and we would get together for lunch once a week. So it's like being a detective and you have to just ask questions to find out what are they really like. And then you also want to look for a track record of success. You want to look for maybe they haven't done this particular job, but what have they done in their other worlds? Did they have leadership roles? What did they accomplish? Those are the kinds of things you can ask.
I've never heard anybody say that about athletes, and that's so true, especially right now we're watching the Olympics, like going crazy. And it's true is that those people are really good at not only holding either themselves accountable, I think in a huge way, because there's a great commercial out right now with Michael Phelps. And he says, it's what you do in the dark. Have you seen that?
No.
Basically, he's saying it's what you're doing when no one's watching. Everyone sees you in the spotlight, but they don't see what it took to get there, first of all. And they don't see what you're doing on a daily basis in the dark that actually is getting you the results that you're seeing.
I love that. That's one of my favorite things.
Google that commercial because it's a fantastic, I think it's by Nike or somebody. It's a fantastic commercial where he talks about that.
That's awesome.
And that's the stuff that you don't necessarily see. And as agents, we need to have that person really in place because there's going to be operating alone a lot, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. And then the cultural piece of it's really important too, is just to make sure that you have people on your team that share your values. Because that assistant, I always tell people, and I don't mean to be sacrilegious because I'm a really faithful person, but the what would Jesus do thing, I always say, what would Marguerite do? That's what you're not training your assistant how to do things. You want to train your assistant how to think like you. So once they think like you, then they'll figure out how to do all the rest of the stuff.
That's a key component. And okay, so let's take that back for a moment in teaching someone how to act like you would, right? That comes down to training. And I think that is probably the toughest part, is to actually be able to sit down, spend the time to train somebody in the way that you want things done. And I know I try to explain a lot of times, this is how I think. This is why I do things the way I do, right? There's a method behind my madness. Like my mom used to say, there's a method behind my madness. There's a reason why I do things. And I think that is a valuable piece in training. So how do you get the training set up? How do you actually follow through with the training? How do you get that part done? Like, I think all of us in the perfect world would just send them out to your place, let you train them and send them back, kind of like a puppy.
But you know what? Part of the training that's important is the relationship that you're developing during that training. So sending them out and back, is great, but it doesn't do everything that you need it. You can leverage a lot of it because the person that you're hiring should be resourceful. An assistant needs to know how to find answers on her own or his own. So there is send them to your MLS and have them on Boomtown or DocuSign or whatever doing the videos. You would not like to do that as an agent, but an assistant would be totally fine with doing that. In terms of the training, I would say chunk it out and think of it like flying a kite. You let the kite out, it goes out a little ways, pull it back, and then you let it out the next time a little farther and you pull it back, and you just keep doing that and set a goal of maybe 3 months. And at the end of the 3 months, that kite should be flying high, but knowing at the beginning that you're going to have to do a little bit of reeling in and teaching. And I'm not the most patient person. I'm one of the behavioral. We also use the ABA behavioral profile. I'm in the top 1% of most impatient people. So probably I totally get that sounds familiar. But my last hire, I actually did chunk out the time, and I started with half days at the beginning, and I chunked it all the way down to we only talked on the phone once a week by the end of the 3 months. And my goal was that she would be fully on her own by the end of 3 months, and she was. And it was the first time I actually invested the time up front, and it totally paid off. And she's been with me for 4 years, and she's beyond amazing.
I'm telling you what, I'm going to transcribe this entire audio today and put it and read it and soak it in next to my bed every single night. It's been really good.
It's worth the investment. Here's the other thing. I think agents think that they have to create all the systems so that they can train the person on how to do the systems, and you don't. You have to do exactly what you just said you did, which is to explain, this is how I do. These are my standards. This is what I expect. And then let them just shadow you, and then they can create the systems from there. Because they're probably going to be better at that than you are anyway.
So my favorite saying is inspect what you expect. And so you related it to a kite, and I relate it to anyone who's had children, teaching your child how to make the bed, right? You go in and you assume, okay, I showed them once and now you're done. Well, that's then you're going to go back and the bed hasn't been made. It hasn't been made. And some people never learn how to make a bed, but hopefully you find somebody who can figure it out at some point.
Can't see upstairs right now.
But the bottom line is that you have to keep checking, and you go back and you're like, okay, not quite that way. Let's do it a little smoother. Here's where the pillows go. Like you have to keep. And I think that a lot of us, and I know that I used to make this mistake back in early on in my career, is that I would just do it once and I'd forget about it. And then a month would go by and I'd go back and I'm like, you never did it right to begin with, right? What happened there? That's the way I thought you told me how to do it. There's all this kind of communication gap. And until you go back and forth, sometimes 2, 3, 4, 5 times, then finally you're like, okay, now we're good. We can move on to the next thing.
I think it's good if they can watch you do it and then do it with you and then do it on their own. So whatever you're teaching them, whether it's preparing the contract, let them watch you prepare the contract, do it together, and then let them go do a contract and bring it back to you done.
So you talk about systems. Do you guys have checklists and stuff that you use?
So we do everything, no paper. We don't do anything with paper anymore. It's just not scalable once you get to a certain volume of transactions. And we're too mobile, right? We want to access everything from everywhere. We have systems, they're checklists in the computer. We use Top Producer for absolutely everything, whether it's a contract, a listing. We take a new photo for the team. I've got a checklist that tells me what to do. We hire somebody. I have a checklist. We have an open house. We've got it. Anything you do more than once should have a checklist, especially if you only do them once a year.
They're all my notes.
A year. So yeah, we live off those upper lists.
I'm writing so much number
to what to do.
So you have all these checklists, and that I'm guessing you have checklists for your training as well. So that when a new person comes on, depending on what that position is, that helps you get through the training agenda for that new employee, correct?
Yeah. So we have something called the 100 days, which is basically 3 months. And we break it down into 30, 60, and 90-day period, what activities they should be doing, who is in charge of mentoring them through that. Sometimes it's me, sometimes it's my contracts manager, sometimes it's my CEO, sometimes it's people in our office. So what they have to do in that time period, who they're dealing it with, and then what is the milestone that measures whether they've accomplished that. So for example, if it's a new agent on the team, they may have to shadow a listing presentation. And then their 60-day, they may have to make a listing appointment by 60 days. And then 90 days is that they've got the milestone is they've gotten a listing signed. That would just be an example of that.
So good. I've written down so much on this podcast.
And that would we include everything on there, from making sure you meet everybody on the team. And we have them do a vision board and present it to the team so we can learn more about them and what's important to them, what their goals are. And then it has things like what videos to watch, what books they need to read. Do they need to shadow people? Do they need to learn the contract system? All of our internal lead tracking, all that stuff. It's just all laid out for them.
That is amazing. So now I know, Christy, you have been putting some of this together in like training programs. Is any of it available as you put stuff like this together that people can buy or get from you or stock you?
Well, I haven't. I'm teaching live. I'm doing a class called 10 Secrets of a Mega EA around the country. And I think I've got 3 or 4 more left this year. You can check my website for that. But I don't have the products. Part of the process of the agent putting it together for the team or the admin putting it together for the team once you hire the admin, it's really important that it be personal and completely with what your team goals are.
I know, but wouldn't we all like to have that magic pill where I could just snap my fingers and you would walk in and it all magically appear?
There's a number of Facebook groups that are really great that I have benefited from being in, where people share their information. So if you're a mega agent, there's a mega there. And I don't think it's not just KW. I think it's all agents, mega agents. And then there is an admin one as well, executive assistants to mega teams, as well as a real estate admin group, which is admins only. So there's a lot of resources out there I think you can reach out to.
Those are awesome. I'm telling you, you have to put this together for people. It's so good. And I know we've talked a little bit about this before, but in the perfect world, even if you could put together a few trainings for this, it'd be pretty amazing for either both executive assistants and agents that are building teams, because it's becoming more popular. When I did this 20 years ago, people didn't have assistants. I'm like, who do you think you are? You've got an assistant.
It was interesting. I was at the Zillow Summit recently and they put statistics up and the teams are growing phenomenally. I forget what the numbers were, but there's 36% more teams now than there were 3 years ago. And the sizes of the teams are growing significantly as well. So I think we're going to see a lot more of that. We've been blessed because I'm with Keller Williams. So we have a lot of the models that we can use within our system, but they're not Keller Williams models. They're just business models.
Exactly. You know what? This has been an amazing conversation and I just adore you and all that you're doing. And I think I would like to just like crawl into your brain for a little while. Or like I said, I just need that magic pill. I'll just snap my fingers and my team will be running smoothly like that. So
next time we talk, I'm sure it will.
Hey, you know what? I'm going to be in Virginia September 21st, speaking at the Virginia Association of Realtors meeting on September 21st.
Oh, that's awesome.
So I'll be in your neck of the woods. Maybe I can pop on over and have coffee or pick your brain a little bit.
Awesome. I'd be happy.
Thank you so much for joining us today. You are fantastic. I've been wanting to interview you for a while and we did a great interview a little while back and I jacked up the sound recording stuff. I'm glad we were able to connect today on this. And thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Marguerite. My pleasure.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us today on Real Estate Real World, where we talk with masters and leaders in real estate and beyond on how we can raise the bar in our industry. Please subscribe over on iTunes. And while you're there, be sure to give us a review. Your reviews encourage us and help others find our podcast. For show notes and hot topics on what's going on right now in our real estate industry, pop on over to www.realestaterealworld.com and add your name to our email. Thanks again for listening. And go out there, be a part of the elite masterclass in raising the bar on the real estate industry.